member consultation for our CIOC redevelopment project. Thank you all for registering and providing an enthusiastic response to this consultation. As you may know, we've been sending a fair number of communications through the lines these days, through the CIOC alert list and through the boards. And we have a very active redevelopment committee, which we call the CIOC V3 Task Force. And we are all very keen to have these sessions happen so that we can make contact with the members and get a sense of where they're at with the software so that we can get some good information from you about it. Now, Laura, if you would be able to get people unmuted or give them the ability to speak, that would be great. And while she's doing that, I will just let you know sort of a general go-round today. We do have 2 hours booked for the session. We anticipate that is the maximum amount of time that will happen. We hope to get you out earlier than that, but it depends on where the discussion goes and how many great ideas are coming forward about the redevelopment. So what I'd like to start with, if we can, is we'll start with a round of introductions, get everyone to talk about or introduce themselves, and if they could tell me how long they've been involved with CIOC, how many years have they been using the software and familiar with it. Then we will have a presentation from Kate and Chris, KCL. Kate will be going over the information around the search functionality in the community resource model or the community information module, whichever you like to call it. And she'll be going step by step to explain how the distinctive features work. And all the way along the process, we will be asking for people's comments and feedback. Kate has taken the suggestions that have been existing in the enhancements list for quite some time and has a notion of how the enhancements can happen to the search functionality of that module. So she'll be presenting to us some information around what she sees the changes could be. And all along the way in this process, we want your feedback, your reaction, your information. We certainly, I encourage you all to speak your mind and say what you want to say because we do want this to be a participatory process. After that, we will hope to leave a little bit of time at the end for any extra questions or things that perhaps come up that you want to ask as we get discussing and thinking about the features. And then, we'll wrap it up. And, of course, we always welcome your comments and suggestions. You can either email myself or you can put a posting on the board. And if you have thoughts or ideas as we move through the consultation, there might be something that occurs to you tomorrow that you want to add and comment on, and we certainly welcome those comments. So are we able to speak? Do we have speak capability, Laura?
It looks like I've unmuted everyone.
Okay, so if I could have everyone sort of start the process of introducing themselves and where they're from and how long they've been working with CIOC.
I'll go ahead first. It's Michelle in Ottawa. I've been here for 2.5 years, and I'm joined by Mélanie Baudry, our Regional 211 Coordinator.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Another brave soul. Next.
This is Claudette McDavid from the Social Planning Council here in Sudbury, and I'm joined by Susan Sculla. Victoria will not be joining us today, and we are extremely new to CIOC, as well as very new to webinar. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it is. Thank you for attending. It's a different way of meeting, but CIOC is renowned for meeting this way. I mean, we really do have a lot to communicate, and as I'm sure you're learning, there are lots of things to know about CIOC, and we certainly find lots of opportunities to use webinar and teleconference and all of those wonderful technologies. So it might take a little bit to get used to it, but hopefully the fact that you'll have something on your screen and something to listen to will be a good experience for you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, it's Anita from Community Information Hamilton. What was the question again?
How long have you been working with the CIOC software?
Oh, the CIOC software. Oh, about, I don't know, 7 years or so, but not real well. Like, I need way more help. So, yeah, that's why I'm here.
Welcome. Anybody else?
We do have a few people that are having trouble because they're logged in as microphone, but they're trying to dial in, so we can't hear them, but they can hear us. So I've suggested that they change their login, so that might be the issue.
Might be a bit of a delay there.
Tried that, yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell them, everybody can post their questions, and I'll try and keep an eye out for them and direct them to either Kate or you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry I can't hear all of you quite yet, but welcome. And so just to give you a bit of context, what's happening is that we are a couple of months into this, what is has turned out to be an 18-month redevelopment project. We applied some time ago. The board of directors applied some time ago to the Trillium Foundation for some funds to do a major redevelopment of its software. And there were some bumps along the way, so there was quite a bit of time in between the time we applied for funding and the time we got the go-ahead to do the project and receive the money. So we have taken a 2-year project and shortened it down into 18 months. And you know, the gray hairs that will be happening on the heads of KCL might be due to that particular crunch of time. But what we're doing today, just so you know, will have influence on the way the software looks and what things are planned in the development for year 2. We see year 2 in the development as May, basically, this coming May until the following May of 2012. So the things we discussed today, there will be some other steps in the process before we know exactly how many of your wonderful suggestions that we are able to implement into this redevelopment. But that will be the piece of the software, the changes that you see coming at the end of the project, so part of the year 2 plan. Not being a technical person myself, I can only say that the stuff that KCL are working on right now in what we're calling year 1 of the development plan is very boring. It's the basics, it's the foundational elements, it's the inner workings in the background that will help us have a software that is more up to date, more stable, and more in keeping with today's products. Kate, I know you're probably cringing on the other end, but I sort of see that as just because you might not see some things changing in the software in terms of the functionality, don't think that things aren't happening, because KCL is working very diligently at working on those foundational pieces up front. Kate, now I don't know if any of you had a chance to view or review the PowerPoint that was sent out last night. Kate and Chris worked together on providing a short PowerPoint that would summarize the key elements around the searching functionality in the community resource module. Because we don't have everyone in speaking mode, I don't know anyone on the line. Has anyone had a chance to review that information?
No, not here. I didn't get it till this morning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then. And you know, I beg your forgiveness of anyone who really knows this really well. But we are going to go through a little bit of a review of the elements, and Kate will be using the PowerPoint she sent out to review the aspects of the software. So, Kate, I will turn it over to you. Kate, are you there? Kate? Can anyone hear me?
I can. It's Lynn Sage here from Hamilton.
Yeah.
And Lynn, you're not hearing anything on the other end, are you? Are
No,
you hearing?
I had to hang up and log back in with my audio pin. I wonder
Okay.
if maybe.
But I haven't heard anyone else speaking.
No, I haven't either. Okay.
It says she's unmuted and that, so I don't know what the issue is.
Oh, she just
Oh,
wrote
she said
here.
she's
She's
going to try dialing in again. Yeah.
All right, souvent de même, comme webinaire avec CIOC, là, c'est comme, tout d'un coup, tout marche bien, puis là, tu vas entendre le bébé à Kate comment ça va, ok. Puis Kate va comme, okay, well, you guys talk about this.
How many of you are, while we're waiting for a moment, how many of you use the CIOC message board, the forum?
We do in Ottawa.
Okay. We've had some interesting learning over the last little while. The task force is trying to determine the most appropriate methods of communication. And we find it's a bit of an audience. Some people really like the forums and the boards, and some people don't.
I think it's very functional.
Am I working now?
Hear you, Kate?
Okay, someone I can hear typing, so if you're typing, make sure you mute yourself while you type. Okay. Sorry about that. I was speaking, but and my audio was working earlier, but so I'm not really sure what was going on there. But anyhow, okay. So about the PowerPoint, don't worry if you haven't read it. This document is intended to be a living document that can be both a reference and something that we update with the content that we determine in this session. It contains both a summary of existing features in the areas we're going to cover today, as well as what we've been able to gather in terms of proposed changes, both from the enhancements database and just from discussions we've had with members over time. So some of it is not covered in the enhancements database, but we are aware of the need based on discussions that we've had with people. So we've done our best to capture everything that we're currently aware of. It certainly doesn't capture everything possible that we could do to improve the software, and we really are going to rely on you today to give us some feedback about what works and what doesn't. Because although we use the software a lot, we don't use it on a day-to-day basis to do your work. And really, the way each of you do your work is a little bit differently. So it's important that we have an understanding of how things work for you or don't work for you now, and that your individual input is really important, because the way that you work is likely to be slightly different than the way that another person works. So having lots of individual input is really valuable to us. We can't possibly know what it's like for you to do your day-to-day work. We can only make guesses based on the feedback you give us. So that's what I'm really hoping that we get out of today, is an understanding of what works and what doesn't for you now. In terms of the things we've already identified, it would be great to get a sense of priority from you about which things you feel are important or less important. And also, if any of you have any new ideas to share, this is the moment to try and get those captured so that we can see if they fit into the time we're going to have available. Not everything that we're listing here can be possibly done in this project. So, you know, be aware that this is not we're not presenting a list of everything we're going to do. We're presenting a list of all of the ideas, and then we're going to try and prioritize those, and along with all of the other areas of the software, identify which things are the most important to you and what's going to get prioritized for this project. Okay? All right, so because searching is a pretty common function, I'm only going to sort of review the areas where people would like a little bit of a heads up about how the existing features work, keeping in mind that At any time you can go back and look at the PowerPoint presentation, sort of see a bullet summary. I'm going to bring up the form or page that we're discussing so everyone can have a quick view of what we're actually talking about. I'm going to poll and see if there's any particular area of the functionality that people would like a little bit of a review or explanation on if they're not sure how it works now, and I'll happily go through that. In future sessions where we know more people are less familiar with the content, we'll make sure you get training videos and other things farther ahead of time to sort of make sure you're up to the same level. I'm hoping that with searching, most people are pretty close to the same level, and we'll just review those areas where you might need a little bit of extra information and not every little detail of everything, okay? Once we've done that and everyone sort of feels comfortable with the current state of things, then I'm going to go through my list that most of it is put together, as I say, it's come from a lot of it has come right from the membership, from you guys, but it would be good to explain what each of those things are to get a sense from you about how much you would value that kind of change, and then have a little bit of a discussion about how you're using that particular page or form now, what works and what doesn't work for you, and have a discussion about whether there are any additional ideas or changes that we could add to our list for consideration. Any questions about that process? All right, after we do the first section, I'll do a little poll, or Liz will do a little poll, and we'll make sure that the way we're approaching it works for everyone, and if need be, we'll make some adjustments before we go to the next section. Okay. So, what we're covering today, so that we're really clear about what is and isn't covered today. We're covering the basic search form, the advanced search form, saved searches, browse by organization, the new My List feature, and the search results page. When I'm covering the search form, I will not be discussing the search results page. So we're keeping it just to the forms and what those forms do. And then at the end, we'll discuss how search results work and applies, because that applies really to all of the different types of searches that we'll be talking about. So basic search, advanced search, saved search, browse by organization search, and My List all use the same search results page to show their results. So we'll discuss that as a separate item at the very end and talk about that in an independent way from doing the actual search form and searching work, okay? I'm not covering make search, taxonomy search. Oh, there's a question?
I don't know that GhostMeeting is actually showing the...
Oh, have I not done show my screen? Pardon me.
Yeah, it's not doing...
I can't show my screen. Someone has to make me presenter.
You can make yourself presenter, but I will make you presenter. I didn't realize you weren't presenter. Okay. Now you can show it.
Now can everyone see my screen? Yes. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I wasn't presenter. And okay. So we're not covering make search, taxonomy, thesaurus, child care searches, or any kind of search that is not on this list. All right. So as tempting as it might be to sort of branch off into those, there will be other sessions that address those items. So we're not talking about those today. We're also not talking about client tracker integration with search results or anything to do with client tracker integration today. That, again, would be covered separately. All right? So just to sort of put bounds around the specific things that we're going to talk about today, and rest assured that those other things will be covered, but by separate sessions that are specifically about those topics. All right. All right, so I'm going to actually, pardon me, I'm going to end my presentation. I'm going to go to the basic search form. That is what we're going to discuss first. Does anyone, I know that not everyone uses all the different search types on this form. I'm currently displaying every kind of search type available on our basic search form today. Does anyone have any questions about how any of the particular elements on this basic search form work that you would like me to review before we get into any discussion about changes? I've got 5 huge slides of documentation about what each of these do. if you want to be able to go back later for your own interest. But if you just are not, you're not really clear on how something works and you really need more information before we get into a discussion, please let me know and I'm happy to address any of these items.
You can raise your hand
if you're muted. You can type your question. You can go in chat. If you can speak, you can just feel free to interrupt me and speak out. Okay. Well, I'm going to
search.
Oh, yeah.
What is the OCG field number used for?
Okay. So the a few of these items, including availability and OCG number, are really specific to a couple of our members who do a particular kind of information and referral or hold a particular kind of database that's really outside of the scope of, say, a 211 service or a community information service. That's the availability section and the OCG number. OCG is actually Office of the Comptroller General, and it has to do with certain types of organizations that are assigned this particular number for their interactions with government billing, government services. So it's really disconnected from what most of you, I think everyone on the call would be doing. And likewise, our availability module, which I don't think is really used by very many of our members, is for those who actually record capacity and availability and waitlist information about their records, and this is a search specifically for that vacancy capacity module, which most of you wouldn't be using at all. Okay, any other questions I can address? Okay, I think we're good to go. So I'm going to, and again, please feel free to interrupt me, and if you need clarification, I'm happy to give it. All right, so these are, I would actually say everything on this particular list is member supplied. So these are all things that are a result of a specific member request that we've had. Some of them are not going to apply to very many of you or any of you, and some of them I think will be useful to all. So I'll go through each one, and I'd really like to get some sense from each of you about what your opinion is on the feature, if it would be useful to you or not, or if you have any comments. Okay, the first is allowing the removal of serving or located in community options for those that don't use both fields. So in our basic search and in our advanced search, when you're searching by community, you have the located in community search, which uses the located in field, and the serving community search, which uses the area served field. We do have a couple of members who only use one of those. So they don't do both areas served and located in, only one applies to them. So at the moment they're forced to have both on their form, but one is in effect completely useless to them because they can't turn it off. So this doesn't apply to most people, and I'm probably not anybody on the call, but we are aware that it is a need in our membership as a whole to be able to remove one or the other of those items from the search form. Any comments, questions? I'm assuming that nobody on the call actually needs this feature. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right. So I think the general, I mean, this is a very easy, I could probably have done it in the time I've been talking about it kind of feature. So something that's pretty easy to knock off for our members that need it, but certainly not a high priority for our membership as a whole.
Yeah, we have one person on the call who said they don't use the serving.
Okay, so we do have one person on the call for whom this would apply. So that's good to know. So that makes another for me. All right, next one is a more generally useful feature, and that is our located near search option. Oh, sorry, a hand, one more question.
We have a hand up from Kathy Rowland. Do you have a comment, or is that a stray hand?
Okay, well, you monitor, Chris.
I'll put that hand down.
All right.
If you do have a question, and you can type it into the question area, then.
Okay, our next feature is a more generally useful feature. That is adding our proximity searching or located near searching to the basic search form. I'll bring that up on the advanced search form so we can see what I'm talking about. this is our proximity searching. Not to say that the layout for our basic search would be the same as it is here, but this search is currently available on our advanced search form and on our child care search form, and it allows you to find records or sort records based on their proximity to a given location. So if I type in, say, Jackson Square, Hamilton, I could find services within 10 kilometers of that location by adding this. I can also choose to not restrict the geography, but just make sure that the items that are nearest occur first. Okay? So the idea here is to add some variation of this proximity searching. It probably won't look exactly like we have it on our advanced search and our basic search form, but some variation of proximity searching into our basic search, so that potentially instead of or in addition to our regular community searching, we can allow the public to do some kind of proximity searching to find services near them or near their workplace, etc. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that? As with other basic search form items, you would be able to choose to use this feature, so it wouldn't be a requirement. It would be something that you could choose to add to your forms. Okay, is this a high priority or a low priority item for many of you? If you could throw out your 2 cents.
Yeah. High priority item, raise your hand. Does everyone know how to raise their hand? Leslie saying it's a medium priority item. Mike Hodgins is raising his hand, I guess, for a high priority item.
Okay.
And Leslie says medium.
From Hamilton. I would say it's about a medium priority for us.
Okay.
Kate, you might want to add that the other activity that we will be undertaking at the end of the consultations is to have members give their feedback in terms of how they would rank the choice of improvements. So people will have another opportunity to evaluate this and say, how important is this to me?
Absolutely. So once we've gathered all of these items, the possible list, then absolutely we're going to take those and allow people to do some ranking and let us know how important each of those are. So this isn't a formal let's count hands kind of session. It's just getting a sense. Especially for me, I like to have a bit of a general sense of how these things come into play.
Is there a comment from Hamilton, or is that a
Does Hamilton have a comment to make?
All I was going to say about the proximity searching.
Oh, can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
All I was going to say about the proximity searching is that it actually, I classified it medium in part because it would be really important that it be very intuitive, and I think as time goes by people are getting more sophisticated in their public use of these tools, but it's because of my sense that maybe some people wouldn't know what to do with it. It's partly why I was calling it medium, but it's actually a very useful tool. I know we use it a lot here in our advanced search, so that's my qualification of the medium.
Yep.
Probably we would do it more along the lines of search near postal code or search near address.
Yeah.
And not have the big map and the...
Exactly. So it would definitely have to take a different format than what we have now in advanced search.
Okay.
Absolutely. It would need to be compact, first of all, and need to be relatively intuitive. And any checking it does to actually verify that it can find the location should really be hidden from the user, unlike what we have now where it actually maps it right in front of you so you can see that it's finding the location. We would probably hide some of that from a public user so that it would be very simplified. So yeah, I completely agree with you there that it's not necessarily an as-is, but just the idea of having proximity searching and the ability to bring things up in a certain radius or sort by closest first.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that people who would value that capacity would probably be really happy to see it.
Okay. All right, so our next item. Yeah?
Michelle in Durham says it's not a priority there, and Michael says it is a high priority for Halton, especially if in conjunction with located in areas served as customizable.
Yes, I would have to be, because likely people are going to choose one or the other and not necessarily do both or have it optional how that's set up, so for sure.
And York isn't interested either.
Okay. Allow more options for the quick list. So we'll take a little look at the quick list. And just to review, your quick list at the moment is either comprised of a list of publications or a list of general headings. So depending on how you've configured it, it's one or the other. If it's a list of publications, you might be picking just specific publications and not your full list. But really, that's what it's based on. It's either general headings from one publication or specific publication codes that you've added to your list. So we have a few potential changes that have been requested around how we manage our quick list. One is the ability to match any or match all for checkboxes. Right now, if I click 3 of these, it would bring up records that had any of those 3. So if I had 2-on-1 French in one and 2-on-1 telehealth in the other, they would both match. Having the ability to say match all means that you can identify services that have both of those items and not just one. So it can be a simple, match all of these, match any of these type of radio button that allows you to be more explicit about whether you mean any of the items you select or all of the items that you select. Next is the ability to search across multiple different sets of general headings.
We do have a hand raised. I'm not sure whether that's a straight hand. Victoria Cameron.
Okay. At the end, we'll do a general poll for sort of comment question on the quick list. The ability to search across multiple different sets of general headings, or the ability to easily search with subcategories of general headings. So we've discussed in the past the need to separate out general headings into categories and subcategories because a lot of groups need more than one level in the general headings that they set up. So that's something we already know is on a wish list. So this would mean an easy ability to organize groups of general headings either by using 2 different publication codes and have the headings from both of those, or multiple different publications codes and have the headings from all of those, and or the ability to have this idea of subheadings in general headings so that you have sort of a big category and several smaller categories, and another way to basically increase the variety of topics that you can currently put in your quick list from what you can do now. At the moment, you can only search one kind of general heading at a time. There's absolutely no capability to search, say, a general heading from publication A and a different general heading from publication B. You can't do those simultaneously. And finally, the idea of grouping of options. So this came about really when we, Michelle from Ottawa will hopefully know what I'm talking about, because I'm pretty sure you're one of the people who talked to me about this. The idea where people have to pick from 2 different lists and have a search that incorporates a choice from each of those. So the idea that I have to pick maybe a target population and a type of service, just as an example of 2 factors that you might need to pick. So I could say my target population is at-risk girls, and my service that I require is temporary housing, or pick whatever you like. But the idea that you're basically picking from 2 distinct lists that are separated in some way, allowing people to get the sense that they're choosing from multiple different factors instead of just one big blobby list, checklist, or drop-down list, which in some cases can have hundreds of options and is really too overwhelming for users to cope with.
There's a request. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Show us this in the database because we're not sure what they're talking about.
Okay, so some of these, because I'm speaking hypothetically, I can't actually show you anything right now other than our quick list, but I can certainly try and clarify what I mean by any of those items that I've discussed. So I'll go through them again, and one at a time, and you can let me know if you want clarification.
Okay. We need to start with what general headings are.
Okay. All right. So what are general headings? General headings are similar to publication codes. They're a way to tag records as having a particular category or classification. A publication code is the, I guess, the mother, the parent of a group of these classifications. So there's, at the top level, there are a set of these publication codes, which is simply a way to tag a record as belonging to a particular group or set. What that group or set is really up to you. And then within that, you can set up a whole variety of what we call general headings that really are subcategories, further classification system that falls under that particular group. So if I go into the publication section, I'll go, let's see. Here is a publication I set up that's called M. And I can create, I've created a bunch of what I'm calling general headings. They're basically subcategories within that publication M that I can then tag onto records. So if I had a publication called, CCAC is one that's frequently used, so for the Ontario CCAC. That's a publication code where I'm saying all the records that I tag with the code CCAC are all records that are sent to the OACCAC. And then within that, I have a list of the LINs, so the Local Health Information Networks, and I have to be specific about which LIN each of those records falls under. So it's a way of doing a top-level classification, saying these are records that go to the CCAC, and then the general headings are a more refined way of saying within that umbrella group of this belongs to the CCAC, the individual records also can belong to one or more of these subgroups. We'll do a whole other session on general headings and publications, and because they really do a lot of different things. They're used for print tools and lots of different things, and I could spend 2 hours explaining just how general headings and publications work, so I can't go too deeply into that today. Really what I want to focus on is ignoring publications and headings for a minute, and I'll just take it back to its most basic level of what we're trying to do with the quick list. The quick list allows you to create your own little groups of records and be able to access them quickly, hence calling it a quick list. You can actually name your quick list anything you want. The source of these comes from a couple of different places, but the reality is right now you can either have one drop-down list or one set of checkboxes. That's it. And the challenge we have with that is we have members that need to have multiple, what amounts to multiple quick lists, where they have to pick from more than one list because they have more than one sort of factor that goes into doing a particular kind of search. I gave the example of picking a target population and then picking a category of service. And we also have cases where people want to organize, instead of just one giant list, they want to have it have subcategories, which really applies more to, see if I can find one with a drop-down. That is do we have one with the drop-down here, Chris?
Online might have a drop-down.
No. So this can be a drop-down list too. Just change mine to a drop-down. This one doesn't even have a quick list. Yeah, CIOC data management switched to a drop-down for me. So instead of checkboxes, this can also appear as a single drop-down list where you can only pick one item. And in that case in particular, the ability to sort it into categories and subcategories and really easily do searches either of the whole category or of the specific subcategories, it has come up again and again as a real issue, especially for some of our members who are doing least views, where they make extensive use of the quick list and the categories of the quick list. Does anyone have any? Chris is loading this up to show the drop-down display of this quick list, but does that clarify what a quick list is for the person who asked? So the values that are in this list are completely chosen by you and organized by you. It's not any kind of built-in thing in the software. Should I give any more clarification about Quick List, or does that answer the question for the person who asked? Okay. So I know that I have people on the call who've asked for the things that I've talked about today. So I'm hoping I can give them the opportunity to maybe talk about what their particular need is and address it maybe in a better way than I have. Any volunteers?
It's Leslie. I'll say a little bit because we use drop-downs, quick lists, general headings, flyout menus, all sorts of things that are based in the general headings tool. And I absolutely agree that especially around the capacity to have categories and subcategories, or what headings and subheadings, whatever, is something that we've run across regularly with our View clients. These are our paying customers, so to speak, and so we always try to give them what they need to meet their particular situation. A good example would be a view we created for Ontario Works, where they have a selection of records in the database, and then they've got headings, sort of big headings, basic needs, employment, blah, blah, blah. And then within each of those, under basic needs, we have food, we have shelter. And because this is a specific collection that they have determined out of our database that they want to be able to see, and then that they want their caseworkers to be able to very quickly, with a combination of a heading, perhaps, and a geographic location, to come up with a customized list of services that are appropriate for the client that's sitting in front of them, and then print them out. Those kinds of things are all based in headings. So for those who haven't used them, there's great potential, and especially around the generation of revenue, which I know we all are always interested in, and having that enhanced will be very helpful. That's all.
So Leslie really addresses it, that this is something that usually comes up for people who do leased views or specialized views for particular groups, so not their general data management view, not their public view necessarily so much, but really when they're creating special views and portals for a target group, a particular organization who wants their information organized in a very custom way that is different and just unique to them. That's where this type of organization and classification really comes in.
The reason I don't have much to say, it's Michelle in Ottawa, is just because the work that we were doing for Elise has been on hold for a while, so we haven't come up with any problems with the solutions we found so far to just include everything in the main general headings of the publication code.
Great.
It's Lynn Sage here from Hamilton, and I'm one of the clients leasing records from Leslie and others in the area, and we've created large main headings and then specialized subheadings, I think similar to what she was giving in the Ontario Works example. So I think if I'm following properly, that this would be important to us.
I would agree, Lynn. It would have made your work of classification, in this case, I should point out Lynn is quite an expert in CIOC because she did a lot of the classification, most of the classification work herself, but the thing we're talking about would make that kind of process much easier and more intuitive, and less sort of less having to manipulate it around the way we've done with flyout menus and so on in the side panel. It would be much more able to be in the main drop downs and such.
Okay.
So the issue right now is that people are already having to do this work, and they're really having to find workarounds to make it work, which means a lot of extra classification work or an interface that just isn't as nice, presents the user with many, many options that aren't structured or organized. So this is something that people are already trying to find ways to do, but don't have a way to do it really effectively.
Is there any ways that Deneen from Kelowna? Can anyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Is there any way to, maybe this is really off the topic, so you can shove it aside for later, but any way to print that properly where you have the general headings show up? I'm having that difficulty for the publication and the general headings, the subheadings, and so they're all classified when someone would print that.
Sorry, do you mean print out your list of headings?
No, actually print the records, like when you print the records, and that you'd be able to, in your print profile, be able to choose that you want these general headings. That's how you want your records sorted.
Not sorted, but I mean that'll be covered in the print tool session.
Yeah, that's what I meant. If it's something else covered, sorry about that. I was searching for it.
There will be a separate session that talks about our print tools, and a lot of the information about publications and headings is going to be covered when we discuss those tools, because they're really so tightly tied into how our print tools work. And I understand what you're saying about we've had that request from more than just you, so that's definitely something that we'll already have on our wish list in terms of being able to group records under their headings and sort them that way. So that's, I'm already aware that that's a desire, and that will be covered in the session on print tools.
Excellent.
Thank you, Janine. We'll make sure we write that down and note that suggestion. I wanted to just say that we have a question from the audience about the taxonomy. And the question is, slightly off topic, how possible would it be to use the taxonomy as the basis for the grouping of records to which you could attach views rather than publications and general headings?
Sorry, what are we trying
to do? A limited view based on a taxonomy instead of a publication.
No, it's based on making the taxonomy be the headings as opposed to doing it through the general headings tool.
Okay.
In other words, building an index system and a classification system for a publication that was taxonomy based rather than headings based, if I understand the question.
In terms of the print tools, which again we'll cover in that session, we can absolutely, and that's on my list already, is to discuss the taxonomy in terms of the print tools. If we're talking about can we use the taxonomy in the quick list, that's absolutely something that we could explore, where you would be able to pick specific taxonomy classifications and have that be your quick list so that you don't have to do the classification twice. Yes, absolutely, that is something that we could look into. So I'm happy to add that if that's what you intended. That's definitely something we can do.
We also have a question around the basic search, and if it could be streamlined for the basic user, for the public. I think what this individual is pointing out is if you're looking directly for an organization name, how that process of coming up with just that record could be streamlined. I believe that's the interpretation behind that question.
And they specifically called out the searching like an exact match on organization names.
Okay.
Are you using the autofill already? Because we find that works perfectly, very well.
Would be to switch to organization name and then pick the one you want.
So perhaps making it the default. We had already discussed that we need to change the location of the what you're searching for things, because people see the find and they type in the find and then they hit search and they don't read what they're actually searching in.
Yeah, I should have had that on the list actually, because that is a request. It wasn't documented in the enhancements database. That is a request though that I have flagged in my message board post. The ability to have this section, the where you're looking, be a little bit more prominent and really come before you start your search instead of after, because what's happening is people are typing in first, and then they never get to the point of picking where they want to look, or the autofill has already happened in the keywords before they switch to organization name. So that is something that has been pointed out to us and really should have been in my list already. I don't know if that addresses what you mean.
I'll say that we would be really in favor of that in Hamilton. I think having the where you're looking and then what you're looking for coming second makes eminent good sense.
So the other thing that we could potentially do is, and this is still an emerging possibility, is there's interfaces in the browser to find out where a person is. So that can tie into the proximity searching or the serving community or the located in community, so that's something that the user doesn't necessarily need to fill out unless they absolutely want to. So that for a public user, potentially the software could infer where they are based on the information that's provided by the browser. That's a more complicated thing to do, so it may be outside of the scope of this project, but it's...
Anyhow, but back to the whoever had sort of asked about finding organization names, does that address the issue you were discussing? One of the other things that I had on my list was when you pick from the autocomplete on an organization name, that it would automatically put quotation marks around it for you, so that you would only get it in that order, and that would mean that it would have to be an exact match, and that's really going to decrease the amount of noise that you have of extra records that are not the one that you had intended.
Yeah, I think that the comment here afterwards, as you were discussing, was that having the extra step of having to then select the record, or finding a way that it works a little more like Google, where you type something in and it comes up with more exact matches. I don't know if that helps in terms of the context of the question. But yeah, I think you're pointing to, Chris, certainly that if the ability to strip down some of those elements were there for a community to make a much more basic search for the public.
Let's be really clear about what is going on with this basic search page. 90% plus of the people who are coming to your website, and this is verifiable through stats, are coming to it from Google. They're never going to see this search page. So the people that are actually using the search page on your site are likely to be, generally speaking, more sophisticated users that want to have a more sophisticated searching tool.
What Chris is trying to point out is that, in all honesty, the public doesn't use your basic search page. The public doesn't use your search pages at all. And although it's really important to have a very usable search page for the public, that's very, very important. Everyone should be aware that 90% plus of your traffic that comes from the public never touches your search page ever. They go right to the record and they search with Google. And we have all of the statistics in the weblogs to show that that's true. So it absolutely is really important that we have a usable search page for the public and that we improve it as much as we can to simplify it and make it easy to use and intuitive for the public. But be aware that you're doing that for an incredibly small number of your users, because they almost all get to us through Google. Also be aware that some of the features that Google has, like constantly refreshing your entire search results as you type, requires an amount of computing power and network usage that is completely beyond our capacity. It's like running your search results, every letter you type, rerunning your search results. And Google is huge and has thousands and thousands of web servers. And has a computing power and a network bandwidth that we can never have. And so some of the things that those really big guys like your Googles and your Microsofts can do, it's not that we couldn't technically do it. It's that it would never work as nicely, as quickly as it does for Google. And the consequences to our everyday use of the software in terms of the speed that we have and the amount of traffic we're generating would be astronomical. And so the cost benefit of that ends up really coming out badly for us. So they're cool features, things that some of those things that Google can do. And in fact, it's not that we couldn't technically do those things. It's that if we did them, the consequences would be disastrous.
And Google is doing that to improve the search experience by low percentage points, basically. It's like shaving off seconds from the search process. And, you know, over there, billions of people who are using it, that's important. And that's an optimization that they've come along to the point where they can make. We're not there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I totally agree with the underlying statement of, you know, how can we make this a more efficient process for the public? And I agree. And actually, some of the later things I'll discuss really are trying to address that particular issue. But we do end up hitting a line where we can't be Google. I would love it if we could do stuff that Google can do. Truly, I love Google. And in fact, I often end up searching the CIOC databases with Google when I personally am doing a search for me. So I love Google, but we can't be Google. As much as I would love to, and everybody wants to be Google, we can't be Google.
Okay, so moving on from that.
Yeah.
A flyout menu is when you hover over an item and a new menu pops out over top of it. So that's the games view.
Thank you, Chris. Kate and Chris, just as a quick aside, I think that this will log the chat, right? Will we have a chat log, a documentation of all the questions that were asked during this session?
Absolutely, we will.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking it might be good for the group to share. Michael has just shared a link to something in answer to someone else's question, and it might be good if we could share some of those discussions, questions and answers. So I'm just saying to the group that we will make the attempt to share that chat log with everyone on the call so that they can have some of the information that was shared within it.
Yeah, if you want to see a flyout from Hamilton, you can look at the gain or you can look at the newcomers.
Okay, so here we go. This is a flyout menu. So as I put my mouse over it, I'm getting all the subcategories. And this is an attempt that required a lot of manual work because the category list is very unfriendly to that. You can see it's just one big blob list. And here we get to see our drop down. So here we can see that what they want is this. They want to be able to pick a category and either search that category or pick a subcategory. So this is what the target is of what they're trying to achieve, and this is all the software can do for them right now. Okay, so we're going from this and trying to get something closer to this.
This is Lynn here from Hamilton, and this is my view. One thing I'm wondering about is whether to make those flyout menus even more user-friendly. Right now, you roll over them and they pop out, but it's very touchy. Can they be just clicked on so that when you click on the main heading, the flyout menu stays?
Yeah, this isn't even part of the software right now. This is something that they've done for you in your setup. It's not actually part of CIOC software at all. And certainly what we would like to do is bring the concept of I pick a main category and I pick a subcategory into the regular search form and not off to the side like this, so that you can add other criteria like keywords or community or anything else that you wanted along with the category or subcategory that you choose. And it wouldn't work exactly like this, but I'm hoping that this gives a sense to those who don't understand what we're talking about, what we mean by breaking down this gigantic blob list into something more structured so that people can more easily sort through a very large list of information.
I think that would be a huge improvement, because when I'm demonstrating our view to people, they either have to browse by the category, but they can't, when they're doing that, as you've pointed out, they can't limit their search to, say a specific geographic location or some of the other options for just making a more defined search. So I would really appreciate being able to do that at my end.
Right. So that's, I hope that clarifies. I think it was really good to be able to go into this and show this actually is the same general headings that we see here, and they, in fact, when you click them, it performs the same kind of search that you would if you were picking from this drop-down menu. But because it's not part of the search form, that's all you can do is pick a category. You can't take advantage of any of the other search capabilities of the software. So what we're trying to do is integrate the idea of this into our regular search form and really give people some ability to control that they don't have now, to control the display of it. And whether that means, first I pick one category and then a subcategory, whatever the case may be, I would actually hope that we would be able to present lots of different choices in the same way that we now allow you to pick between a drop-down and a checkbox. I would hope that as we added more features, there would be more choices so that each group can customize it in a way that works for what they are trying to do.
So we have lots of comments about keyword searching versus org searching, and we have much support for taxonomy, using taxonomy for the quick list, and we have people that have not, say, food banks, for example, to launch the file menu, how useful is the file menu in general, I guess.
Okay, well, so just to be clear, this menu, this isn't part of the software, and I'm not particularly saying it will be. I just wanted to demonstrate when someone was discussing flyout menu what they meant. This is something that someone's done custom in their database. So moving back, I'm going to move back to our regular search form here.
Make the statement that we are recording this information and we're documenting it. So it's good to have these suggestions and think out of the box a little bit, because I think that's good.
Yeah. So in terms, we've got a few questions sort of rolling at once. I want to stick with the quick list questions first, so I can close that off. So are we all? Okay. So I have definitely, we've definitely documented the idea of taxonomy for the quick list. So then we were then talking about how to deal with the keyword searching and the various places where you do the keyword searching.
So there's some debate about whether people search from Google or whether they search from the menu here, and what we do about organization name versus.
Right.
So perhaps if they select organization name, that search needs to be a default to a not a keyword search, but to having quotes.
No, well, so what we were proposing, and I'm bad for not actually remembering to put this in my to-do list, but what we were proposing was to add some additional options to how you configure this in part of the search to show where you're searching. So people could keep it as they have it now, but I would also like that to give them the option of changing the order in which these occur, for one, the ability to move where you're searching above the text box if you want to, so that you need to pick the organization name before you start typing in your keywords. And one of the things I mentioned specifically was when you're doing an organization name search, that we automatically put quotation marks around it. But there is yet another thing that we can potentially do, especially with the organization name search, where I think this is where this comes into play most often, is when we return an organization name, and I can do this in regular keyword search too, because I can tell when I'm returning an organization name and when I'm returning a keyword. That's actually a really easy thing for me to be able to tell. I can potentially make it so that if you click on the, that I can put an arrow next to it or do something so that you can just directly go to the search by clicking on it without actually having to bring it into your find box, click on search, et cetera, but rather just directly pick the name and run a search immediately just by clicking somewhere here, like search now, or who knows what that may be, where it would automatically quote that name and bring you directly to a search for that organization name without having to do the extra step of clicking search. So that's certainly possible, and follows on from some of the other things we were talking about already in terms of moving, where you're searching, putting that above, doing some automatic quoting to avoid having all those extra results because it matched the word but not in the order that you intended. Do you think that addresses what you were talking about? I'm not even sure who did the talking because Chris is just telling me. So, Kelly, do you think that addresses the particular concern that you had about organization name, if you were able to go directly there without having to do all the extra clicking and searching? And if we did that quotation marks that I was talking about where it automatically makes it be the exact way that you've clicked on without having to get all the extra results just because it had the same keywords? Any response? Okay.
Type because she doesn't. I would still prefer that if you type the name of the organization comes up. The drop-down box is distracting.
Well, I mean, the autocomplete is your choice, but you can turn that on and off in your view. If you don't want the autocomplete on, you can get rid of it.
And we have Michelle, Information Bureau, asking about going directly from an identified autofill to the record you want, and that's what we were discussing with either a search result or going directly to the record or something like that.
Right. So, I mean, we can do something such that
But remember that could be ambiguous because it's going to match on one.
It's just level. One org level. Yeah. It's not the full. It's not the full record name. So, it's problematic, and part of the reason the keyword searching happens is it ends up bringing things up in alt name and former name, and by eliminating, it's getting really tricky if you start restricting the results that you're getting based on the autocomplete, because you're going to end up missing records and getting sort of incomplete results. So I get where you're coming from, but it's a dangerous change to make. It's going to have some unintended consequences that I worry about in terms of not matching records that you mean to bring up, and the fact that we're not bringing up the entire organization name, and we can't because honestly they're too long. Even bringing up just one org level at a time, some of them are so long that they barely fit the screen. So I type my big brothers again. We can get names that are so long that they wrap around and they're gigantic, and that's just from one org level. If you had 5 org levels, basically it would make the autocomplete useless. Like, this isn't bringing up records, it's bringing up org levels that it finds. Org levels that it finds in the database. So it's not like every one of these is one single record. It may represent multiple records, and they might not even be all connected. So if I might have 2 records with the same org level 2 value, but a different org level 1. And if you click on it, you're going to get 2 completely different kinds of records, and we have no way of knowing ahead of time which one you need.
Okay, well, why don't we flag, though, that there is sort of a general desire to have a customizable basic search page that limits users, the public's need to click multiple boxes to get to what they're after. Why don't we sort of flag that as a common desire that members seem to, the people on this call would like to have something that's slightly more simplified for the public, even if we don't know how we would go there or achieve that. I'm mindful of the time, and we have another question, and the question is, would there be a way to limit which pub codes are included in the quick list?
Yeah, you can already do that. It's in your view setup.
So, Kate, my understanding is that the only way you can do that is by marking something public or non-public. Is that correct?
No. No, that's not correct. You can pick the specific publication codes that you want.
Under each view?
Yeah.
Okay. we'll see if there another question arises in terms of whether that was exactly the information they wanted. Now, Kate, how do you feel? It's 11:15, and we've been working on basic search. Do you want to continue to talk about basic search, or do you want to move on to advanced search? What information do you really want to cover in the next little bit?
Okay, so I need to at least go through the rest of my list. And sort of we can try and address anything else that comes up, but I have a few more points just for basic search that I haven't discussed yet. One, and an important one is, and probably addresses some of the concerns, is the ability to do custom layouts of your basic search page. The idea being that I think most people agree that the basic search form is relatively unattractive and clunky. And what we would like to do is present a number of different predefined options for the way your basic search page might look. This is outside of what you can do now in terms of picking which search options are available, and instead we're just talking about how the page is laid out. That instead of everybody's search form looking just like this, menu on the left, big box around the search form, big sort of headings like this, that we provide a number of different predefined options for how you might lay this out, and also give you the ability to create your own template where you provide the layout yourself, and you tell the software where you want it to place certain types of searches on the page. So this would mean that people would have full control over the layout of their basic search page and have it set up exactly the way they want it to be, and simply tell the software where they want particular search elements to appear on the page. So for those who don't have any in-house technical or design skills, we would provide some additional built-in layouts that they could choose from. And for those that do have access to some technical or design skills, that they could really completely customize the design of their front page to be whatever layout and design and content that they wish, and no longer be constrained to, I have the menu on the left, I have my big box of search on the right, and I have maybe a footer on the bottom, and that's all I can do. By allowing people full control over the layout, you can really set this up any way you want, provide additional content on the page, whatever it is that you want to do, and it would just insert the search elements where you needed them. So hopefully that alone would go a huge way towards addressing people's concerns about simplifying a public search or anything like that, because really we would allow people to lay out the form and the design and the layout any way that they wanted. And if they don't have technical expertise in-house, we would add some additional layouts that are built in, so you could choose from any number of those as well. I mean, we would probably provide maybe 3 different pre-configured layouts that people could choose from that would expand on the basic box, box, box look that we have going now. Do we have a question?
We're getting support for the custom layout, and getting support for custom layouts on custom things. And there was a question about limiting the codes that are included.
Yeah, we already addressed that. Okay, so next, this is a pretty simple one, but actually pretty critical for some of our groups that do customized views, and that is our age search. You currently have to have every single age category you set up on every view if you want to have the age search on the front page. The problem is that if you want to create one portal that's intended for children and youth and another one that's intended for seniors, you have to put senior citizens and adults in the children's portal, and you have to put toddlers in the seniors portal. So the idea here being that for each view you would be able to choose the specific age groups that apply to that view and only include those. So it's a pretty straightforward feature. Chris will let me know if you have any questions about that one. Create a limited SQL server thesaurus to cover frequently used synonyms. So I don't want to get too deeply into this. There's some documentation in the PowerPoint about how we do our keyword searching and how that keyword searching works, what kind of results it returns. We rely on SQL Server to do the keyword searching. So although we construct the searches and send the information to our database, which is SQL Server, SQL Server has built-in knowledge of the languages that we're using and how to read the words in the database. So, and a lot of that information is language specific. So the way that it interprets French versus the way that it interprets English is different. One of the things that you can do for each of the languages is create your own thesaurus. So this is different than your ACICO or Inform Ontario thesaurus, your keyword thesaurus. This thesaurus is specifically for setting up word synonyms. So an example would be that I would have a synonym that if anyone did a search for auto or automobile, it would automatically be a synonym for car. So if I search automobile, it would match a record that had the word car, just as an example. Because these have to be set up manually, meaning we have to go in and actually create a thesaurus file, this would really be a case where we would want to identify frequently used terms where we think people are often entering this wording and we are often documenting it using this wording, and really to increase the number of records that people can return that match the topics that they're searching for, so that someone doesn't miss out on a record that says car just because they did a search for automobile. Anyway, that one's tricky because somebody has to decide what appropriate synonyms are, but I thought I would put it out there just because it is something that we have discussed in the past. Finally, add additional full text fields so users can search in more specific columns. This really is more likely to apply to the advanced search page, but right now we only have our 4 options: keywords, organization names, subject, service categories. What we're discussing is the ability to have a few more of those where you can look only in the description of the record, or look only in the comments and internal memo of the record, or whatever the case may be, to allow more options for keyword searching. So again, it actually belongs really more on the advanced search than on the public page, but and we can't possibly full text individually every field in the database. The size of the databases would be completely out of control. But if we identify particular fields where people want to be able to do keyword searching very specifically in those areas, we may be able to create indexes just for those particular fields or groups of fields. Does anyone have any questions about those last 4 that I just discussed, or comments?
We have support for it.
Okay, well, I will, because I'm sensitive to the time, I'm going to move on to the advanced search. And again, I'm not, especially because of the time, I'm not really going to go in huge detail in terms of how the existing page works. The page that I have here has every possible thing that you can add to your form. Everything on this form can be added or removed except the custom fields and certain things that are determined by your permission, like SQL, the Add SQL section. That's all detailed in the PowerPoint presentation if you're curious. And I'll go through what we believe are some of the issues. So first and foremost is that we think that the advanced search form is rather large and overwhelming to use. And so most of the things that we want to do with the advanced search page are to do with making it more efficient to make use of the advanced search page without having to scroll through a humongous, overwhelming form. The first idea we have for dealing with that is to allow people to favorite certain sections of the advanced search form that they use frequently and hide the full form. and be able to quickly switch between their sort of the favorites on the form, which just shows the things that they search with frequently, versus the full form. So that way, when I normally come to my advanced search form and I usually only use search terms, or I almost always use, you know, this field and nothing else, then I can have it just show those to begin with. And then on a particular day, if I need to see the full form, I would just click the full form button, and all the things that were hidden on the form would appear, and I could have access to the complete large form. But on a regular basis, I wouldn't have to be wading through the gigantic form for every search that I perform. Are there any questions about that idea?
It's Lynn here. I think I might find that helpful. I honestly don't use the advanced search that much, but when I'm running stats on usage, there are only a couple of fields that I use towards the bottom of that advanced form. So it would be helpful to be able to just, you know, single out some of those key fields I use and not have to scroll down past everything else. It's not a big issue, but it would make it just that more efficient.
One of the other things that we could do in the same line is allow you to set up a couple of configurations of the form. So if you have, say, 3 tasks that you regularly run through your advanced search form, one is, you know, finding records that need updating, one is, you know, doing some kind of statistical query, and another one is, you know, doing a regular record search, that you'd be able to easily switch between those forms so that it's just a, you know, pick it from a drop-down, and immediately it'll just show you the parts of the form that are relevant to the work that you're doing. So there's a few different ways we can approach that, whether it be I just have a favorite, or whether you give sort of a quick drop-down that people can quickly have with a one-click, have it shorten the form just to the search criteria that apply to what you're doing. But overall, a way to reduce that size of the form so that people are not dealing with the entire scope of that advanced search form every single time they do a search, because it does involve a huge amount of scrolling and finding just the section of the form that you need to use.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay. Okay, so that seems to be, I think people are pretty clear on that concept anyway. There's another one on here that was really similar that I wanted to. Right, I'll skip down here quickly. Along the same lines, the idea that we would create another kind of advanced search form that's just a text-based query, so that instead of clicking a bunch of boxes and tabbing and scrolling, that you would have a single text box in which you could type in instructions for the search. We call it sort of text-based querying, and many people who have been in this sector for a long time probably came from other systems that allowed text-based querying of some kind, whether that be STAR or EddieBase or whatever you like. Many of the old systems did entirely text-based querying, where you simply type the information you were looking for, where to look for it, and the type of search to do, and it would execute that search without you having to, you know, navigate a big search form in order to do that. So what we're proposing is, on a limited basis, that we would create a basic text-based searching tool to allow you to do that type of searching. And with that type of tool, we would probably make it possible to lock that little text box on the bottom of your screen, so that at any time you could perform a new search just by typing the instructions at the bottom of the screen, hitting enter, and it would bring you up new search results. We really feel that that would help a lot in terms of speed of especially the INR staff, if they had access to that and were comfortable with that. But we certainly wouldn't see that as taking away any of our existing search forms, because some people are much more comfortable with a mouse and doing a point-and-click approach to their searches. But for those who want speed and are comfortable with doing a text-based search, having that option can really improve their efficiency, especially for INR staff on the phone. So that's the idea. I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions about that. Okay. Well, feel free to continue making comments. I'm going to keep moving just in the interest of time. We don't have any autocomplete on the advanced search page, so we would like to make that an option. Autocomplete is always optional. It's something you can turn on and off in your view. So if it's not something you want to use, you wouldn't have to. But for those who like the autocomplete feature, we would like to enable that on our advanced search form. It's currently unavailable. What we're most significantly missing in all our search tools is two items. First is the ability to refine your search. So once you run the search, there's no ability to search within your search results or to modify your criteria and execute a new search. So that's a really significant searching enhancement that we want to see. And the other is the ability to review your recent search history. So to go back to searches you've done recently and either re-execute them or modify them, but in some way return to your previous searches in case, so that you don't have to, you know, retype, oh, I did a search, I did another search, oh, but I actually wanted to go back to that search I did before because it had something I missed or it had better results. You won't have to completely fill out that search form again in order to return back to the search you did, you know, 2 searches ago or 3 searches ago, because you would be able to see some of your recent search history, how many records they returned, and really easily be able to re-execute those searches.
Okay, we go back for a second to the, I think this is related to the text-based search form. They're asking if they would be able to specify search the field of like an email address field. So
yeah, so the idea behind the text-based searching would be that you would be able to do what we call now our custom field searching, meaning searching inside a specific field. That would certainly be one of the things that we would include. Keeping in mind that searching in a particular field isn't keyword searching. So it isn't intelligent. It has to be exactly what you type is what it finds. So say you were searching for an email address, you would have to know that you sort of at least a portion of that email address in an exactly correct form in order to find it. But yes, that's exactly what we intend, that I could say, look just in the language field, find English, look in, you know, I could do community search and then type in a community name. And hopefully we would still be able to add in some of our autocomplete to help you while you're typing in the same way that when you use a lot of applications these days, it sort of does a little ghost completion of the word as you're typing, and you can just hit enter to finish filling it in. That we would put in helpers like that to try and reduce the amount of typing that you have to do for your searches. So that is exactly what we intend, is without having to scroll through a giant form, that you can do many of the searches that you now do on the advanced search form in a much faster way. Because to do an email search now, you would have to scroll down to your custom field search, find the email field, say contains, and then type it in. Whereas what we would propose is you would start typing, you know, the name email, and it would find the field that you want, sort of to tell you that you found a legitimate place that you can do, and then say, you know, equals, or you would come up with the syntax, and then just type the email you're looking for, and it would execute the search. So that's exactly what we're talking about. We would have to really come up with some requirements, and the syntax or the lexicon, the language that people would use for searching. But just the idea right now is what I want to have on the table, that we would provide a tool like that. Okay, we're clear of questions? All right, good. Next. We've had a request to add a search criteria on the advanced search form to locate records that have feedback. That's pretty straightforward. One of the annoyances of some of the new features we put in right now is that you have to remember to click them. So we added a show the details of my search and an open results in new window checkbox at the bottom of the form. But for people who use this regularly, they have to remember to actually check those boxes every single time they run a search, which is really annoying and frustrating. So the idea would be that everyone could set a default preference for whether that they like to have those boxes checked or not. And those people that do like to use those two features or one of those features wouldn't have to remember to click it every single time they run a search. All right, so for our custom field searches, which are right here, we have 2 date ones and 2 text field searches. Rather than having these fixed 2 searches, we would just have an on-demand where you could add as many different date searches or as many different custom field searches as you want to the form on demand, similar to the way I can pick checklist searches and add as many of these to the form as I need to, that you would be able to do the same thing. You would pick a field from the drop, do a search in distribution, add, and it would actually generate a form for you for searching in that field, just as an example. So that is on demand instead of having to always have all 4 of these on the form, whether you need them or not, and be limited to 2 of each. With this model, you would not be limited at all. You could have as many as you wanted, and they wouldn't be on the form unless you needed them. Okay, this is an easy one, the ability to select multiple record owners instead of one. So right now our record owner search is a drop-down, and instead we would make it a multi-select so that you could search for more than one record owner at the same time. And finally, our Boolean keyword searching that's available at the top of the form. This is a setup option, so if you've never seen it before, it's because it's not set up in your view. Our Boolean search option allows you to do some far more detailed keyword searching than the basic, find all or find any that you can normally do. So I could say find cat and dog or mouse, or I could say find cat near Persian, meaning it has to find the keyword cat near the keyword Persian. So there's lots of extra things that you can do if you understand how that kind of search syntax works. But right now, if you make a mistake or you don't know what you're doing, your search just completely and utterly fails, and it doesn't tell you why, because we have no checking in place to ensure that the search that you're structuring is actually valid in any way, and it doesn't fix it for you if you make a mistake. So what we would like to do is make it easier for people to do Boolean searching by having some automatic fixing of your text, and also to warn you if you're entering in a Boolean search that is invalid for some reason, instead of just having you execute the search and have it fail miserably.
There's questions about why people use some of these advanced search features. I'm not sure what feature in particular, but I think that it showed up around the time that you were talking about the adding multiple values in the searches for
there's a question about what people use these search features for. Is there one in particular that you wanted to ask about? Not everybody does use all of these features.
Oh, specifically talking about the checklist.
The checklist. Oh, well, the checklists really are, if I want to quickly find, say, I'll do a languages search, and I say I want to find one that serves, French, then it'll look for that particular checkbox French. It tends to be a little bit more useful in data management rather than in finding a record, say, for INR on the phone, where you're more likely to use a keyword search. It makes it easier to identify anomalous records that have issues. So if I'm looking for I want to find any of the records in accessibility that have unknown as a value, for example, this is very specific to the checklist and not, say, the notes or any other part of it, but verifies that I actually have a checklist filled out. So if I want to look for languages and I want to see that they have at least one checkbox filled out for languages, I can do a search for has none, and it would identify all the records where I hadn't ticked off any particular language. And again, that's independent of the notes or any other things that I might have written in the record. So it's certainly not an everyday tool, but when people need it, it's extremely useful. Okay. All right. So that's what I have now for advanced search. If anyone has any questions about what I discussed, or if you have any comments to make, any additional changes you would like to see, anything else that I can cover, this is the moment.
And also feel free to, if you were coming to this meeting with a particular suggestion or a particular desire about the searching features, please do voice that. Because as Kate said, I mean, there might be things that, have met some general consensus of membership that they'd like to see, but also it's great for us to have new ideas if there are things that, or difficulties that you're encountering with the searching that we haven't already covered. Voice them now for sure.
It seems like a lot of it is focused around the basic search form, which I think really that makes a lot of sense because I think most people use that form first. So I think that one of the things we clearly get out of this meeting is that making the front page search more effective and easier to use and more efficient is obviously a relatively significant priority. If you come up with something after the meeting, you can send a note to me or to Liz or to Laura or post on the board. Any which way you would like to pass on feedback, we're happy to get it. And I will add to this document over time with any additional ideas that we get or changes, suggestions that are made. So don't feel if you don't come up with it now during this meeting that that's the end. Okay, so this couldn't be simpler. Browse by org. I mean, this really the main reason we keep this feature around is because it's really good for search engines. It's a pretty useless search, especially if you have a lot of records. It's not a very effective way of locating records. It does have some use for the public in that it allows people to have a sense of the content of your database and the content of your view just by browsing the kinds of services that you have available. It's also encrypted for search engines and really is a good part of the reason why Google is so good at finding all of our records. So it's certainly something we like to have around, especially for the public. Probably pretty much useless for staff, experienced staff who know what they're looking for, but on occasion it can be useful to find a record where you're sure you have a record named such and such, but you can't find it. So certainly not something we would look at removing from the software, but definitely not a really efficient or useful search. The one suggestion that we have had made about this search is that it doesn't include any capability to restrict by geography. So one of the things we would look at doing is making it easy for people to enter in a community or even a proximity, some kind of geographic-based criteria that would allow them to restrict what they're browsing. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about our Browse by Organization search? It's a whole other issue on the volunteer side, but on the community information side in particular, it doesn't get used very much other than by search engines. Okay. All right, saved searches. Again, hopefully we're into mostly quick stuff now. Saved searches. So our saved search feature is a pretty basic tool that allows you to save a set of search criteria for future use. So this is intended for more complicated searches that you want to run on a regular basis. We know of a few deficiencies of this already. One is that people can accumulate searches that they forget what they do, they never use them, they stop working and they don't know it, things like that. So a few things that we want to do to address that are, one, include a last run date, so we know the last time you used it, which will hopefully be very useful in cleaning up your searches. Everyone does have a limited number of them. And determining whether you even need that search anymore. If I haven't run it in 2.5 years, I probably don't need that search anymore. a last verified date, because we do sometimes do an automated run-through of everybody's saved searches to identify any that don't work anymore and update them so that they will work. This happens sometimes after software upgrades. For instance, I'm going to have to do a verification on everybody's saved search results to make sure that their extra field and contact field searches aren't broken, and fix the ones that we find that are broken. So that's something that CIOC takes care of behind the scenes. And we do have a little flag in your saved search that you can't see that tells us if we verified that search. But what I would like to be able to do is tell you when we verified your search and actually record the date that we confirmed that that search worked. So those are two things that we want to do to really reduce the clutter and the chances of either useless searches or non-working searches that can occur now. Any questions about that? Okay, next, right now only logged in users can access saved searches. I'm not necessarily suggesting that the public be able to save searches, although that's a possibility too, but rather that you be able to create a saved search that the public can run. So instead of a quick list where you have to manually tag a group of records to say they belong to a particular category, sometimes what you would prefer to do is construct some criteria on which you base a list and have it always use that criteria, and therefore if there are changes made to the records, new records added to the database, they will automatically be a part of that list without you having to go in and tag it. That's the advantage of a saved search approach versus a record tagging approach. So having some capacity to have saved searches that the public can run could potentially be very useful. Along those lines, we want to make it easier to access your most commonly used saved searches, and we have a few proposals for that. One is to allow some of your saved searches to be added to your basic search form, whether that be in a similar way to how we manage our quick list now or in a completely different way, but just some method by which you can create saved searches and make them really quickly and easily accessible from your front page, either to staff or to the public. The second item is the ability for you to flag certain of your searches as favorites, things that you run frequently, so that you don't have to wade through your list of searches in order to run them. We can also provide a quick link list of the most recently run searches you've done so that they would sort of pop out from the list and be, at the top of your screen, not having to go through the giant drop down and say these are the most 5 recent searches you've run, and you would just be able to click a link and immediately run them without having to go through the process of scrolling down the drop down, finding your search, clicking execute, and then getting the results. So just making it more efficient for you to make good use of your saved searches. Right now it's quite a cumbersome process. If you want to run those saved searches, you might as well just execute them again. Sometimes it takes so much effort to go back in and go and look up your search and run it. So we want to make it easier for you to make efficient use of these saved searches. Any questions about those?
There's a question about being able to save a refined search. Now, we actually talked about being able to, or is this referring to a new result?
So I think the question is about creating a new result set or picking individual records and saving it. That will never happen because that is something you should tag with a pub code, a distribution code, or a general heading. Saved searches are for searches that you generate out of a search form, not for picking individual records. It's not an effective tool for doing that. If you want to pick a list of records individually and save them as a group, you should pick them, tag them with a code, publication code, distribution code, or general heading, and use that to find them again rather than a saved search, and that's why it's blocked as a saved search. It can be incredibly misleading because people may think that list is based on search criteria where you've actually performed a search and is dynamic and will always be up to date, when in fact if you picked individual records, you're never going to get anything other than those individual records you picked. So there aren't any plans to allow you to pick individual records and save that as a saved search, because there are other tools in the database that are intended for that kind of list. Any other questions, Chris?
There was support for making saved searches available.
Okay. All right, so if there's no other questions about saved searches, I don't want to rush anybody, but we have 10 minutes, so I'm sort of rushing. But please feel free to interrupt me if you do have any other questions or comments about saved searches. The last thing is just the ability to share with an individual user instead of the entire user type. So if I want to share my search with just Leslie and not every super user in the database, I have no ability to do that right now. And what we would like is the choice between whether I want to share it with just Leslie or all the super users in the database. All right. I'm hoping that most of the people on the call attended the recent session outlining the new features in the database, but just in case, my list is a new feature that was added to the database. I have it activated here, where you can pick a number of records and accumulate a list. You'll get a little set of links up in your upper right-hand corner with an icon and the number of records you have in your list, and then you can go review your list, remove items from your list. I can go and do a new search. And add more records to my list. Over time, I can go into an individual record and add to my list that way, and again, go at any time to view my list. Oh, sorry, I'm clicking too fast. So the bottom line is this is a way to accumulate a group of records, not just from one search, but potentially from many different searches that you might run. You can add and remove from that list over time, and the list lasts as long as your session does, which means overnight your list will go away. So this is a temporary list. If you want to save it on a more permanent basis, you need to tag those records and save it more permanently. This feature can be turned on for the public as well, so that they can also accumulate a list of records. So that's the basics of what my list is for. We already know that we want to make certain changes to the My List feature, but most of the top priority ones I mentioned here are actually covered in my next section that I'm just going to discuss, which is about search results, and that's to do with printing and emailing your list. The major item that is specific to my list that I'm sure that we want to add is the ability to save your list for a longer period of time so that it doesn't expire. You know, a save for later button, just like sometimes when you're shopping on an online store, you'll have save my cart so that it doesn't go away when you leave the site and come back in 2 days. The save for later will mean that it's stored in a more permanent way, and when you return 2 days later, you'll still be able to get access to your cart. So it's the same idea that gives us some means of keeping track of this list longer than during the day, the 1 day when your session is open. Any other than printing and emailing your list, which obviously is going to be covered in the next section, anyone have any questions about the My List feature? I know people really won't have had a lot of time to use it yet because it's brand new.
I'm just curious because we don't see the button that you have up in the corner, My List. Like we can go in.
So that means that you have do you have a custom header in your view?
If you have a template, meaning you've designed your own design template, not use the CIOC built-in one, you have to tell the software where in your template to put this.
Okay, that's what
you do this by typing My notepad's all the way over here. Come here, you. I can't even get to it. I can't even get to it. What is? I resized my computer screen and it apparently.
Size it over to the left.
But that's okay. It's the kind of answer I thought it would be.
Type my list somewhere in your template, and wherever you type that, that's where it will show up.
Ah, cool.
Okay? So that you can put it anywhere in your template you want that to be, and that's exactly where it will show up. If you use the CIOC basic template, like this one, it's going to automatically do one of these buttons. So it's not terribly attractive, but it'll put that in automatically. You won't have to do anything special if this is the kind of CIOC template you use. But if you've created a custom one, then you have to tell it where to put it, because otherwise it won't know where. Okay?
Cool.
So, but it's a really sort of simple feature. It has all the same features that your search results normally have, meaning I can then send these to create a map, to do data management operations on, add pub codes, whatever I want to do. But the nice thing is, again, that you can accumulate it not just from one set of search results, but over a number of search results over time, and easily remove things as you're done. So if I'm doing work on a set of records, I can say, okay, I finished my work on this one, I finished my work on this one, and really keep a short-term list that may include results from multiple different searches. Okay, so we're on to our last topic, if there's no further questions about my list, and that is about search results. So I do encourage you to go through and read the information on existing features of search results, just to make sure you know how everything works. And the page help provided for search results is really extensive, really. So if you have never looked at the page help for search results, I strongly encourage you to do that, because it has a lot of details about how the search results work and the information in search results. And my computer's locked. Awesome. There we go. Still locked. I'm having window clicking problems. Anyway, huge, how do the mapping tools work? How does the subject side box work? What are all the little letters in your alert box? How do I use display options? All of that stuff is all covered in the page help. So if you're unfamiliar with how to use all the features of search results, or you've never looked at this page help before, I encourage you to do that, because it has a lot of information in it, and so does the slides that I provided. We do have quite a number of wish list items for our search results. So I'll go through them here, and I'm really hoping if you have any other ideas, concerns, input you can provide to me on how you use your search results, it would be really helpful to me, especially because I'm not there sitting behind you when you're doing your work. I don't know which of these features you actually use, what's a problem for you, and how you would like them to change. So any input you can give me on this is really helpful. But this is what we're already aware of. Allow optional paging of results. So right now, if I have 50,000 records in our database, which we actually have a couple of members who have, between 40 and 60,000 records in their databases, and I did an advanced search with no criteria, it would actually try to, and would, in fact, render a page with between 40 and 60,000 search results. That takes a really long time, and really is not what most people intend to do. And the reality is it's pretty easy to return a search that has hundreds or even thousands of records, whether you intend to or not. Maybe you just missed a piece of your criteria, and it's too broad and you ended up with too many records, but then you're stuck loading this giant page of thousands of search results. And for the public in particular, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Right now, we don't even have the option of paging your results. And really, I'll say personally for myself, I get really annoyed by paged results. Most of the time, I don't want my results to be paged, and I get really ticked if I have to read 15 records and hit next, and then read 15 records and then hit next, and then you get the point. So paging can be a really bad thing, but we don't want to discount it entirely, and we recognize that sometimes paging of results is very useful. So what we would like to do is make this some kind of an intelligent option in the software so that you could choose to turn it on under particular conditions. Meaning, if I return more than 200 records, it's automatically going to page those results. And I can choose how many records it shows per page. So if I want it to have 100 records per page or 50 records per page, I can make that decision when I set my view up. And also, we would still provide a way for people to easily access all the results at the same time if they do want that entire list and not having it paged. Because for anyone who's had to click next, next, next about 800 times to actually find what they wanted, you know that sometimes paging is beyond annoying. So we don't want to get into that annoying sphere. We want to find a nice balance here while understanding that sometimes paging is the right thing to do. If you want to have a threshold that if you get a search with 1,000 records, it's going to page it because you don't, that's usually not intentional, or nor is it useful, then you can make it faster to return the results, less overwhelming for the user, and then you can make a decision about whether you wanted to go back and create a search that returns fewer records instead of having to deal with that gigantic page of 1,000 records and trying to sort through it. But if you really did intend to have those 1,000 records and you want to see them at once, we want to give you the option to do that as well. So that's what the paging feature is. Does anyone have any questions about paging, comments, concerns? Right. Okay. So I think it's really going to be, as I say, that people's individual preferences for how and when to page are going to have to be taken into account, so that every single person who sets up a view in the database is going to need to have control over whether it's going to do paging, when it's going to do it, how many records are going to show per page, and all of those details in order for this to be user-friendly, because it's just not going to be the same setting for every single group and every single task that you're doing. So an option, but with a lot of flexibility to customize it. We were discussing allowing the public to have a limited ability to change their own search results display. Right now, you have to be logged in to change your display options. So here, as a staff person, I get the change display option link, and I can decide that I want to show the email in my search results, or I don't want to show the located in. I can sort of pick and choose how my search display looks. But a member of the public does not have any such control. However, it has been configured for them. That is it. They cannot make any changes. So what we would potentially like to add is some very limited ability for the public to add, say, certain things. So you may provide them with some checkboxes at the top where they can specifically say, okay, I want to add email address to my results. I want to add website to my results. And you would pick, a small handful of fields that you would find permissible for them to add to their search results, and they could choose to do that. But it would not be in the same way that we allow for staff. First of all, because I think that would be confusing without training, and secondly, because it would just be too many options. And in fact, you would pretty much end up giving away your entire database if you did that, because a reminder to everyone that search results in CIOC can be stored as an Excel file, and really anything you put in your search results, you should pretty much guarantee that someone can then download that and have your whole data, like all that data, available to them for any purpose they wish, copyright or no. So this is definitely something that has to be approached with caution and thoughtfully and in a limited way, because it does carry both benefits and risks. But I do think it's potentially useful to allow people to make that decision for themselves in a limited way. Does anyone have any comments or questions about that. Go ahead and speak. Feel free to actually speak. You don't have to type.
Okay, it's Lynn here, and I'm sorry if you're going to be addressing this later, but the one other thing that I would really like is if the public had the option of where we now have the checkbox ability when we're in a search results page, if they could, you know, so they get a list of 15 records, but they only want 5, because I'm often promoting our view for service providers to then be able to, say, print that list and hand it off to a patient or a client. If they could, from that results page, say, click only 5 records, and then refresh the search so that they only have those 5 and then print or email it, I think that would be extremely useful, rather than having to only deal with what comes up when they do the search.
That's the My List feature, which can be turned on and can be turned on to the public. So instead of the checkbox, they would be using this thing at the right where they would add them like this.
Okay, and once they're in the My List feature, then they have the option of printing those or
so
mapping
the idea
those? Okay.
Exactly. The idea being that they would have quick links, and I'm covering this in this slide. Here it'll be...
okay, sorry, I don't mean to jump ahead. I just wanted to
no, I will. Here we go. Add quick printing emailing function. So it's actually the next thing I'm talking about. So this is intended to be a public feature that would allow them to take that list, email a list of the links to themselves so that they would have it as a reference, or use a print template, so not our print profile, so not a print template where they're printing out the results, but actually a full print tool where they can print out the full details of each of the records that they've picked, and add that a possibility to the public via a quick link. So it won't be a drop-down menu or anything like that. It'll actually be a link that says print this list, and it will then print out according to whatever print profile has been set up for that view as a default. It would then print that out and full details of the record, you know, according to what fields you've picked. So not, I want to print out my search results and all I get is search results, but actually printing out the details of the records that you've chosen. So it's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it's exactly the thing that you're talking about is what it would do.
Perfect. Thank you.
And that would be available to the public. So that's, there you go. You've led me right into my next one. So the idea with the email is actually that people would use their own email client. So we would not do this emailing through CIOC servers. We can't allow the public to do any kind of emailing through our servers because we will get blacklisted. However, we can pretty easily launch people's email clients with content of the message already typed into it. And that would allow them to edit the message, to email it either to themselves or to someone else. And because it's going through their own email client and not through CIOC in any way, we wouldn't have to worry about being blacklisted or anything like that. But it gives you a way to, even from a staff perspective, to email a list of links to a client so that they can go and review the information themselves and so on. So that's the idea of the two. You have a question?
We have some concerns about some of these.
Okay.
One is to worry about allowing the public to select the fields that they see cost increase in the database because we can pull out a spreadsheet like of the things with email, website.
Yeah, so Kelly, that's exactly what I had said, that is a concern, but you would choose that. So keep in mind, if you don't want that in your database, you just wouldn't turn it on. So it would really be up to each group to decide whether or not they wanted to allow the public to have access to additional fields. And really, people can already do that now, and some of our members choose to make additional fields like email or website available in their search options for the public now. But that's a choice that each of you make individually. It's certainly not something CIOC would push on any one group. You would just have the choice of whether or not you wanted to allow the public access to additional fields. And you would choose which ones they would have access to if that was the case. But if you were not comfortable with sharing that additional information in your results, and as I indicated, there are risks in doing that because people can just save that information in Excel and whoop-de-doo, I have a database, then you just wouldn't do that. And that's fine. It has to be a judgment call for each group about balancing, you know, whether they think it's a benefit to the public and they're not worried about the risk, or whether they think the risk of it is too much and they don't want to have it.
And yes, there's going to be a vote on the prioritization of the options.
And yeah, So all of these, I think there's a question about prioritizing these items. So as we mentioned earlier in the call, all we're trying to do right now is gather ideas. In terms of prioritizing which of these actually get done, there will be another step involved in allowing our whole membership to prioritize these items. So not just the people on the call today, but really everyone will get a chance to voice their opinions on all of the priorities, because we have to take into account not just the changes we make for these features, but all of the other features in all of the different areas that we're going to cover. So there's going to be a prioritization step, but right now we're really at an information gathering stage. So I like to have a sense of the priorities, because it helps me in determining where to focus energy on coming up with new features, sort of developing more information about them. But right now we just want to get ideas and get them down on paper.
So I'm mindful of the time. It's 10 after 12. Kate, are there any quick sort of key areas you want to cover in the next 2 minutes or so?
Yep, this is our last slide, so we're wrapping up anyway. I'll quickly run through them, and then we'll try and field anything. I'm willing to stay a little later for those that want to stay later to address it. The ability to temporarily change the sort order of your results without reloading the page by clicking on column headings. Right now, if you want to change the sort order, you have to completely change your display options and reload the page and redo your search. Be aware that the sort that we can provide by reloading the page is a better sort than the one we can do by clicking on column headings, and that's part of the reason why we haven't done it yet in most areas of the software. But it certainly, if people are willing to take a little bit less than the perfect sort, that is a feature that we can look into, so that if you want to quickly reorder your search results, that you can do that. But there is a sort of a warning there that the quality of the sort is not going to be as reliable or as good as what we get by requerying the database. Next, allowing users to save more than one search results display. So when I change my results, my display options, I can do a temporary one that just lasts me for today, for this session, or until I change it again. And I can also save my display, save these settings as my default, so that every time I log into the database, it remembers my preference and always starts with the preferred way that I like my search results. Unfortunately, we have nothing to account for the fact that you need your display to look different for different types of tasks that you're doing in the database. So the idea here is that I can set up a preferred configuration of my search results for when I'm doing emailing update requests, and a preferred configuration of my search results for when I am updating records, and so on and so forth, and be able to pick from those predefined ones that I have saved instead of having to reconfigure my search options every time. I can just simply pick from a saved display that I have done in the past. All right, next we have make it easier to identify which fields are already selected in the custom field box. This list here can get really, really huge because we have 150 plus fields in the database. Not that everyone uses all of them, but there are a lot. And the fact that you have to scroll through to see which ones you've picked is a bit of a problem. So what we would like to do in some way, how that is going to happen is still under debate, in some way is make it easier to see which choices you've already selected so that you don't have to scroll through the entire list in order to see or remove what you have already selected. We'd like to make it easier to add additional columns or options to the search results display. So right now, you do have to go through this whole process of scrolling through this giant list in order to add fields to your database. We'd like to look at some other options for doing this. I'm going to go into Windows here for a minute. Pardon me. I can't even see. Okay. see that this shows me the columns that I can see, and I just click File System and added a column for File System. I can remove it just like that. So that's the kind of thing that it wouldn't happen that fast. We're looking to see whether we can more easily and more quickly add additional information to your search results. Even if it still means reloading the search results, which it likely will, we would still like to be able to do it without you having to pop up your change results display and manually reload the page. So again, it's an area where we don't have fully defined how it might happen, but it's a problem that we see, that it's really a big process in order to change what you see in your search results, and we would like to make it possible to do it in a more efficient way than the way we have to do it now. Okay. Two left, really quick. Option to provide more than one sort criteria. Currently, you can sort by exactly one criteria. There's always a secondary sort of the name of the organization, no matter what you pick. But you can pick just one field in order to sort your search results. And in some cases, we've had members ask to be able to sort by two different columns. So first sort by one column and then sort by another column. So that would just be adding a secondary sort criteria. And the option to include some kinds of specialized sort criteria. This would have to be determined. But for instance, if someone wants to be able to do a sort by, records viewed most often in the last 3 months, or some kind of sort of really specialized sorting, we don't currently have any way of allowing people to do sort by anything other than the predefined list that we have. In effect, it would be potentially like the custom SQL that we have for doing searching, only allowing you to do the equivalent for sorting. So that if you came to me and said, I really want to show which records have been accessed most often in the last 3 weeks, I could give you some code to pop into a box that would automatically do a sort for you and show you the most viewed records in order for the last 3 weeks. I mean, I'm picking an example. It could be anything. It could be in the volunteer opportunity. It could be show me the records with the most referrals in the last month. It could be things that we don't normally have the ability to sort on. This would give you that extra capability to do sort of unusual sorting requests. All right, any questions or comments or additions? Please keep in mind that this is not the end. You can take this back with you, reread what I've provided, digest it all, and approach any one of us, anyone on the development committee, Liz, myself, Laura, the board, anyone you feel comfortable approaching to discuss it further or make further comments. This isn't the end, so don't feel pressured to come up with it now. But if you do have anything you want to discuss now, I'll stay on longer if need be.
Okay, so it sounds to me like the silence means to me that people are digesting. Anyone have any comments they want to stay on for? So can I take one moment, Liz? Kelly was expressing some concern about features that she doesn't want. Every feature we're discussing here is optional, Kelly, and even if it's implemented in the software, you don't have to use it. So
specifically about spending the time to discuss it, or like trying to get rid of things that are low priorities early on, I think was her target.
Okay. It's really hard to say even on this call because this call doesn't necessarily represent the whole membership. So even if we get a sense on this call of what people's priorities are, it doesn't necessarily represent the complete membership. I can say that every single thing that's listed was asked for by at least one member.
And in fact, the things that you specifically were concerned about have been asked for by multiple members.
Yeah, so it's It's pretty tricky to say at this point, and it's certainly not something we can do even by polling on this call to determine priority, because we have it, 35, now it's almost 40 now members that we're going to have to poll for priorities. And it's going to have to go outside of just the search, but really cross all of the areas that we're going to touch in order to do that prioritization. But if there's any feature that you are personally concerned about and that you don't want to have that feature, 99.9% of the time, features are implemented to be optional, meaning if you don't want it, you can turn it off. And if there was ever a case where it didn't look like the feature was going to be optional and you needed it to be optional, we would accommodate that. Because we absolutely do not want to put in any change that's detrimental to what you're doing. So that's why almost everything is optional in the software. It makes for a lot of configuration overhead, but it does mean that you're not bound by the decisions that anyone else makes about the features that they want to have or the way that they want to use it. If you don't want to use it that way, that's okay. You would not be forced to use it that way.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for your participation and your feedback. As Kate said, I echo the desire of the committee and the board at CIOC that we want your comments, we want your suggestions. You can email any one of us. You can post it on the board. However you'd like to communicate, please do. And we deeply appreciate you being the first group off the mark to do this consultation. And we hope you participate in other sessions related to other features of the software. As I said in my email, we'll be hopefully arranging those over the next couple weeks, and we will have a schedule out for January so people can plan which ones they'd like to participate in. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Can I one more note? I think we have a couple of people on the call who are either relatively new or may not be necessarily aware of how all of the features we've discussed today work. I'm hoping that when you have a chance to review the full PowerPoint, that will address some of your questions. But we are also going to be prepping training videos where you will be able to see these demonstrated, not just for this session, but all of the sessions that we're talking about. And I'm also happy to follow up with you individually if you post your question on the message board and want more clarification about how something works. And we can even respond with a training video rather than just typing out a response to you. So if you're leaving the call feeling like you're not sure how some of these features work and therefore you're not sure how to comment on them, don't feel lost, because we will. There is documentation already here in the PowerPoint. Plus, we will be following up in the new year with training videos for this session, and all of the other sessions as well will have some orientation and training videos attached to them so that you can review that and hopefully it will help you to respond in terms of commenting on suggested changes. Okay?
Thank you.